Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of People and Places, Story Back Door. So today, I'm taking you guys to the backstory of my experience in Abuja, and I want to explore the difference between living in Abuja as a poor person and seeing the flamboyant lifestyle of lives of wealthy people in Abuja and being a citizen of Nigeria, living in the capital of Nigeria, and getting to see the difference between you and the rest. Now, when you decide from wherever you live in the capital city of Nigeria, in Nigeria, wherever you live, whether in your village, whichever state you come from, and decide to relocate to Abuja, or decide to come to Abuja to search for a better opportunity for whatever reasons you decide that you want to come to Abuja, here is what you have to understand or learn that it's either you're coming as someone who already established, someone who already has some money, maybe you're wealthy, you're rich, or you're well to do. The determination you have to come to Abuja would would be tested by the time you arrive in Abuja and when you start looking out where you're going to stay. If you don't have relatives, friends, or people you're going to stay with to start off, you're going to have to rent an apartment for yourself. Now, here is the deal. I want to start off with myself. When I came to Abuja as a boy, I was very young, and I came to Abuja. Back then, it was Olusegun Obasanjo as president, and it was El Rufai as the Minister of FCT. I must tell you that when I came to Abuja, sorry guys, how do you guys cope with Androids? How do you guys cope with Androids? Because I can't understand. Android is a different kind of what I've, I don't know. This is going to get me, derailed from what I'm trying to say here. I haven't used Android. I don't just use Android. I've not been in any space where I have to use Android. I used BlackBerry back then, from Nokia to BlackBerry, from BlackBerry straight to iPhone, and I haven't had experience with Nokia for this Android thing. This is frustrating me right now. Yeah, so let's get back to the show today. So when I came to Abuja as a boy, I was very naive, inexperienced, unexposed, and didn't know anything. So it was okay for me to start off from where I started from. But then coming to Abuja, I have always pushed myself beyond boundaries because knowing that I was in the village I needed to go to a better place or a better city to, source for a better life. I knew what I wanted in a way. So when I came to Abuja, my future was tested by where I have to start from. My strength, my everything was tested by that. Why? Let me show you a small map of how Abuja is. If you're coming from the east, okay, you're going to be coming through. If you're coming from the east, you're going to apparently coming from Lokoja. If you're coming from still the east or south, for me that I come from Cross River, we went through Benue State, and from Benue State, you have to go through Nasarawa State. And when you're entering Abuja, you hit it or you get started from Nasarawa, Kefi, Masaka. From Masaka, you get to Maraba. From Maraba, you get to Nyanya, AYA towards the main city of Abuja. So that was how I came to Abuja. So When I arrived Masaka, they said we've arrived Abuja. I said, okay, thank God. Now we kept going. That wasn't where to stop, so we kept going. I got all the way to Maraba. We passed Maraba Nyanya towards Wuse, and when I came across after crossing AYA, I started seeing beautiful buildings and all of these. I was so excited that I've gotten to Abuja. I didn't know where this my friend was living, the guy I was going with. I didn't know, but I thought, oh, he must be. He lied to me though I wouldn't go into that. But he told me he was living in Wuse, and by giving, Wuse was better. It was beautiful. I mean, it's the city. But we got to Wuse. It was almost late evening, and I saw buildings. I was excited. I was taken out like I was. Oh, this is where I've come to live. And we passed Wuse. Now we stopped at Wuse and then started looking for a different vehicle. And the first shocker I got was the kind of vehicles that were going to the destination my guy was taking me to, right? And we're going towards Karimu, something around that area. That's where we're going. And sorry, guys. So we're going to Karimu. And after Karimu, there's another name somewhere around Gwagwa. Yes, Karimu, Gwagwa. So I started seeing the kind of vehicles that were carrying people, buses that were carrying people there. And I remember when we get to Nyanya Maraba, I saw the kind of vehicles that were coming, plying that road. And then within the main city, I saw the difference, the kind of cars they were driving through. And I just knew that, okay, these are the kind of vehicles we are used to from where I'm coming from. So it shouldn't be a shocker for me. But it was a shocker when I saw that we are passing where my guy said we were coming to live. And he told me, oh, we're not stopping today, that we're going first to a place, we're going to keep our things, and then we'll come back to the city tomorrow. Shouldn't worry. I said, fine. We boarded a bus going to Karimo. And I boarded the bus going to Karimo. And it was very long bus, what they would call in Lagos, Danfo. They were still Danfo then, flying to Karimo Gwagwa at that time. And we got to, Karimo, and a lot of demolition was happening in Abuja at that time. A lot of demolition was happening. And then even when I were coming from Massacre, Maraba, I saw demolition. I saw a lot of buildings brought down, but I didn't know how the city was then, so I wouldn't know what was the damage. I didn't know. So we got to Karimo, and my guy took us to where we were to stay. By this time, it was evening, and I have passed the dream, the vision I had. I was broken already after passing Wuse, where I was seeing flashy cars, beautiful buildings, lights, everything. I came to Karimo, I started seeing things that I am familiar with. Now I'm familiar with ghettos, So when we got there, I already knew this is where the fate is tested. Now, I have no choice. I'm coming in as a poor boy from the village. Do I have a choice where I'm supposed to live? No, I do not. My friend took us to where we were to stay. Mind you, coming from the village, I didn't have access to television as I would like, you know. So the room they brought us to, there was a very big TV, a very small square room like that. But then the guy has a very big television and very mighty what's it called, public address system there. So the whole thing was just like, so I was taken aback with that, but I was just attached. I was drawn to the TV itself. I just sat down when they were saying let's go and look for what to eat, water to bath. I didn't care. Sat down, I was watching what was on TV. I just sat down and forget about everything. I was trying to take myself. In fact, the TV has already taken my life. This is the life I've come to live. I started watching TV immediately. And so I was seeing different things on TV. I get to see the show. I watched TV till they took light. Somewhere around midnight, they took light. I was just still watching TV until they took light. Then I remembered, oh, and I looked, some of my guys who were making noise already slept, and then that was when they said, oh, if I will eat. I didn't take a shower that night. I just slept like that. The next morning, I was just sitting as if I'm waiting to be taken to where I'm going. You know, like this is not where I've come to live. Now let me take you to the main course of this episode before I get into deep into my own narrative, right? In every city you go, there's always going to be a gap. And this gap is going to be between the poor and the rich. Okay. So with focus to Abuja, when you come to Abuja, the test is the rich lives in the best part of the city. The poor are left with no choice but to live in the suburbs and the trenches and the villages. So in Abuja, there are certain hectares of land within the capital that sometimes are not being developed, being occupied by poor people, called a village. Now in these villages, sometimes within the capital city itself, the main central city, and government always don't like this. Rich people don't like this. So the poor people will cram themselves there with their small bachas, their small buildings, their small houses, anything to just sustain you for your survival. They call it a village. Then it will become a neighborhood to mighty, beautiful, mansions and the aesthetic buildings you see in the cities. For example, when I came to FCT, there was a place called Jabi. Jabi was just a neighborhood to some small villages within Jabi that people were living. But Jabi itself is a very beautiful district. Then, okay, let me stay with the gap. Now, when your faith is tested, where do you belong? You either belong with the rich people who are living in estates, beautiful mansions and the rest, or you belong to the poor people who lives in villages, suburbs, and the trenches, as the case may be. Now, what people who lives in the trenches dreams to do is to move out of the trenches to an estate, so that in the trenches it's likely you maneuver your way to have access to you know um, pipe-on water, which is tap water as we popularly call it. Pipe-on water within your house. You can have a building that is accommodative enough, good enough. You can live there comfortably with everything, amenities there. Your house is okay. It could be a bungalow, whatever. But you're not living in the city. You're not living in those mansions called the main mansions. You're not rich, you're poor, but you are within this means you live. There's no problem about it. But then, how it defines you is if you are someone who is low on dream, you don't have the drive to become better, you can live in that suburb, in that village, in that trenches, with all the amenities you are able to build for yourself and be okay with it. For example, you have a bungalow, you don't have a problem, you're living okay, but you are inside that village or that trenches or that suburb. You're not in the capital city itself or you in the rich neighborhood. So this is the gap. Now that gap, what it defines is there are the rich who controls what is defined as the civilized society, and the poor who are the engine of the civilized society or the rich society. Because when you live in those suburbs, you likely have to work in the main city where the rich are living, doing one menial job or the other to survive. So you come from there. Let's say you live in Maraba or Masaka or Nyanya or what do they call the other place? Karu, all of those suburbs. Even these places now have developed. Back then they weren't developed. They weren't developed. I'm talking of 2000 and then they weren't developed. So it was clearly purely suburbs, villages, trenches. Okay, you can't shy away from it. And you go to Massacre, Karimo, Gwagwa, you're going down to all those places, and then you go to Apo, you go to Durumi. All those places weren't developed then. So, but this is where the population was. So that when you come to town in the day to do whatever you do, you see the crowd of people. You think this is how Abuja is. And then when it is 6 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., people started going to their suburbs. By the time everyone is gone, you come back to the city of Abuja itself, Wuse 2, all those area, what's it called? Mitama and the likes of, what's the most popular, beautiful, most expensive app is no. Oh God. Um, okay, I forget central area and the rest. You now see that the whole city is empty. It's empty. Where are the people? Where is where are the people living in this city that I saw in the afternoon during the day that I came here? Where are the people? They have gone back to their trenches. This is the gap. The people living in the trenches, the people living in those villages are 100% poor people within the average. Okay, let's say if you're still earning between, if you're earning in millions, you earn up to 10 million naira a year. I don't know if you're a rich person, no, but in the economy of today, you are not. Okay, but then you are doing okay for yourself. You can move yourself to an estate. What they do now is, when you live in an estate, you have to redefine your growth from the trenches to the estates. Now you have moved your status up as a Nigerian. From the trenches, you have walked yourself through, and now you live in the suburb, in an estate. I mean, it's good enough, for the sake of growth, it's good enough. Um, is there something I'm missing? Go on, because this is it. I didn't change it, guys. Android, I don't understand, man. Right? Save login info and automatically next time. But why? So, how you guys doing? Good morning. Thank you for joining me here. Hope you're good. I'm trying to log into my. I got an Android, but I'm trying to set it up, and it's just as stressful as anything. I don't know. It's very stressful. Let me see if this is the case. It's not. It's not. I think TikTok is just a different thing. 758 6, 7. All right. It won't. It won't. Why? Try username. No, TikTok is the hardest thing to log into. I don't get it, man. It's the hardest. I don't understand. Why? I log out of my account and I can't log in. Seriously? Is this how you guys do? Huh? TikTok? Oh, wow. Huh. Man, you guys should let me log into my account. What's wrong with you guys? Ah, it's nothing as stressful as this. Just keep stressing me. You're actually keeping me on pause here. How you guys doing? Good morning. You're good. Now, wow. So if you live in a city, okay, now I stay with the focus in Abuja as it is. So choose my interest. How am I coming in you? What's wrong with you guys? This is not a new account. You guys are just, are you kidding me? Sorry guys, I'm just paranoid with this TikTok thing. So my guy, where are the followers, man? I'm not seeing anything. Nah, nah, nah. This isn't it. So the first thing you get to decide is where are you living? Are you living in between the gap between the rich people and the poor people? Because if you're living in the suburbs, you're living in the trenches, you're living in the I live in the trenches, by the way. I live in the trenches because I'm not rich. Do you understand? That's my gap. Now my gap is my focus in life is to bridge that gap, because the gap between the poor people and the rich people is defined by where you live. First of all, where you live. Secondly, people will argue with this that where you live doesn't really matter. It doesn't define who you are. It does in society of today. It does. Why? Because let me give an instance. One day, I called my crew and said, "Oh, let's do this," and they said, "Okay, it's fine." We set up a meeting, and then the person we are supposed to have an interview with, by the way, that's Golden Page Magazine. Okay, the person lives in a certain location. Immediately, this person said, "Give us the location the person was." We have to have another meeting. We have to take another meeting to discuss the location. Now, does it really define why this person will be living in that location? Because you probably will go to that location and you find out that he's living in one of the most beautiful, most well furnished, well, designed, whatever the building would be or the house he's living or she's living in is. You'll be shocked. But then the location itself is located in the gap, in between the gap, you know, and that would be probably in the trenches, the suburbs, or the village. And those places define you because people would who wants to have access to what you do, who you are, or however they want to relate with you, will first of all start making consideration regarding where you live, where you're supposed to be. So, for example, I live in Abuja and I am living in Airport Road. It's very motorable, easily to describe. But if I have a business in the central area, my office is in Fepsin Mall, Wuse Market. If you're going to Wuse Market, after Sheraton branch, you're taking Sheraton down the road. What's this building? My office just by there, right? It's in town, main town. Okay, and then you want to give an address to someone to come to the studio to do something, and you give the person an address somewhere Lugbe, in Lugbe, you see that the person will have to renegotiate the appointment because of where you are living, because of where your location is. So you see, this is why the gap is a definite definition of how your faith, how your future, how your life, how your strength and your vision, your focus, your determination, everything is defined by this location. This is why today I'm talking about the gap, the backstory on the gap in the capital city of Abuja. So wherever you live in the city of Abuja, you need to know that your economy, or your background of who you are, how wealthy your family is, whatever it is first of all revealed by the very moment people get to know this is where I live. Why so many people work so hard to get away from trenches is because if sometimes the life you see in the trenches will just remind you like you have not grown in this life. It will always take you like you are still where you are because you are still among these people. Now, is it the fault of people who do not have money or who are poor to be discriminated about against? No. Why does society discriminate against poor people by creating trenches and villages and suburbs so that these people can live? Is it a discrimination, or is it just the economic determinant that these poor people cannot afford anything better, so they have to live within their means? That is the gap. Now, when I came to Abuja and I started off in Karimo, living with my friend. Oh my god. Android people, you guys they try. Maybe the kind of Android where they use now make 'em. But they say Samsung. Is this okay? It's not Samsung. It's blank and it's talking. It's blank and the phone is talking. It's playing something. It's playing something. Eh? I can't touch the screen. It has stopped. You get Android, sir. Go get Android, sir. I've gotten Androids. I've gotten Androids. All right. So now I get to it back. Sorry, guys. I'm taking you playing here. I'm actually having my. Well, so why is a determinant factor is because Nigeria itself, from the beginning of time, is a discriminatory system between poor and the rich. This happens in every society. If you go to London, go to places like Peckham, you would see you see the rare. I mean, you see rare images of poverty in London. Go to Peckham. So, and there are other suburbs within London that you really see the glaring picture of poverty. In Los Angeles, go downtown Los Angeles, you see what poverty is. California is the richest state, but there's poverty there. So there's nowhere you not see poverty. New York, you see poverty. Poor people have to coexist with rich people. But the problem or the difference with these other Western countries is that poverty definition in Western country is different from poverty definition in Africa. Why? Because in Africa, you barely have food to eat. The worst of it is you barely have a good living condition or environment. In Western countries, poverty is revealed by the condition of the environment, first of all. Secondly, most times is these conditions are created or caused by people themselves. And in Los Angeles, for example, poverty didn't hit and say, "Oh, this is a poor economy, people don't have jobs, that's why there's poverty." No. Poverty hit because a large chunk of the population sunk into um, drugs and couldn't work and couldn't earn money. And so they got themselves into homeless situation, and then eventually it trickled down to becoming homeless, and then you be categorized as a poor person. But in Africa, that's not the case. So I stay with the story as Nigeria as the case is. So for example, in Nigeria, the reason why this poverty is so glaring or shows so immaculately is because right from time Nigeria has always been a discriminatory system built to prevent people who are poor from, you know, being in the same space with people who are rich. And because of this, it has become the gate, or sorry, the fence just keep going up, up, up. Today the wall is too tall that it can hardly climb to become, to get over the other side. That is why this gap has become wide and wide and wide and wide. Today, you can't see the end of the gap. Before, you can easily live in a place like in a suburb or in the trenches, be hoping that if I have like 400K, I can rent an apartment in an estate back in the day. Now the gap have widened. Okay, you'll be looking at 2 million naira to be able to rent a decent apartment in an estate. We're not even talking of living in a rich neighborhood. We're talking of living in trenches to say you give yourself an upgrade to get closer through to closing the gap of being poor and the rich. And this can take you years. Before you know it, you can't even go half a mile to closing the gap that you have. So in Abuja, as the case may be, like I told you guys, when I came to Abuja, I experienced this mass demolition that our Air was carrying out all around Abuja. People were thrown to being homeless, families, disenfranchised. People get, some have to go back to their villages, and people die from depression and losing properties. A whole lot happened. How would these people pick up their lives? How would they now close the gap? Because when the RFI administration came, they needed to destroy all those suburbs, those villages within the capital where they said, okay, it was threatening to national development or capital development and all of that. So what happens to these people that were living there? They have to struggle to close the gap created by the economy of Nigeria, created or established by the leadership of Nigeria. So now you say they have to be capital development according to the FCT development goal. And then what you're saying is if you can't live in the FCT where the map or what the design of FCT is, you have to go back to the trenches where you are. Trenches being that those suburbs, those villages where we live, where we don't have a decent environment to breathe good air and all of that, that's where you are. That's where you belong. So if you have to close the gap, you have to work hard. Now, this gap I'm talking about is how much it will take you to close the gap between being in the trenches, being born poor, being a poor person, living among rich people, and wanting to live a decent, stable, standard, good life. To close that gap, some people need 50 million naira. Some people need 100 million naira. Some people need 1 billion naira. Some people need 10 million naira. Some people need just 1 million naira. Now, closing that gap could be that you are homeless, you need a house. That's how you have to close your own gap that the government creates for you or the economy of Nigeria creates for you. You need a house. You're living in a one room and now you want to live in a safe content. Is it safe content? I don't know what it's called. But an apartment where you have your own utilities between your kitchen, your bathroom, and your toilets inside. Safe content, yeah. So that's what your goal is, to close the gap of poverty or to show that I'm growing. For some people are living in that one room, sorry, in that safe contain, but to close the gap of poverty, they need to move to a one-bedroom flat. For some people are living in a one-bedroom flat, trying to close the gap, they have to move from a one-bedroom flat to a two-bedroom flat or three-bedroom flat because probably they have kids, or at least to flex that I'm growing. I mean, I'm making a little bit of money. I want to live a decent life. It is a lot. It's a struggle. Every day in Nigeria, this is a struggle. Not just in Nigeria, everywhere in the world. But I'm taking Nigeria as a case study because it's my country. Abuja is my city where I live. So this is where the gap, closing the gap is. Some people work so hard to close the gap by moving from the trenches to a better environment called estate. What estate means in Nigeria is different from what an estate means outside Nigeria, let's say in the West. In the West, there are public buildings, massive or mass public buildings, where in America it is called the projects. Okay, in the project is mass buildings, so it's like the trenches or the hoods, as American will refer to it, the hoods. It's more like we call it the trenches. We go to Lagos, we have people like we have places like Ajegunle, Mowe, all those areas, you know, Makoko. All those places are the typical reality of the gap. That is why you see people who made it out of the trenches give thanks to God. Like people who made it out of the trenches, for example, you came out of Ojuelegba. Sorry, Whiskey said you came out of Ojuelegba. Why would you celebrate because you came out from Ojuelegba? To where? To a better place. He has closed the gap of being in a Ojuelegba. So Ojuelegba is not a place. And there no human being living there. Why do you now celebrate that you came out of Ajeguli? Because you've closed the gap between you and the rich. Now you have belonged to the other side of the neighborhood. You're no longer in this other side of the neighborhood. That is how we close gaps in Nigeria. For some people, I've never heard someone said, oh, I was living in the village and I closed the gap to come to the city. But for some of us, me, for example, I am competing against people who have lived all their lives in cities, get exposed on time, get educated on time or proper education, could speak good English better than me, have exposure. We're exposed to television before I do, exposed to good cars before I do. So I'm competing against those people. First of all, what do? I have to migrate from my village to a city. Now, there are millions of us like that. We all migrate from the village where we were born, raised, went to primary, secondary school, and likely the only reason why we have to leave the village is because we have to go to university or polytechnic, as the case may be. We have to leave. So when we migrate, go to a bigger city to live, to go to school, we now get exposed to a little bit of urban life. And when you get exposed to urban life, you have to start competing with people who have been in the urban life before you came. Learn their ways. Because you're a village person now, you just came to town. You learn how they live, what they do, how they behave, and everything. After learning, you have to start trying to close the gap, make a way through, to belong, to build a legacy for your transition from a village person to an urban person. And from urban person, you didn't just come to an urban city and you start living in the best part of the urban city, which is the rich neighborhood. No, you came and you're living in the trenches. And first, as you're trying to build your name yourself, you learn and eventually you start closing the gap. You see how difficult it is to transition in Nigeria? So Nigeria is not a country where you are born into a little bit of a stable life first. So that the only thing you have to compete against to closing the gap of your life is just growing to establish, to get established, to stabilize your life and build, a standard good life for yourself. No, you start from closing the gap of coming from the village because our urban life is different from our rural life. We come from rural settlement as village people, most of us. 90% of people that occupy big cities came from the village, came from different villages, from different typical places around Nigeria, coming to Lagos, coming to Abuja, Port Harcourt, and the rest of those. So the first thing you do is you transition from a village man you are to getting yourself civilized. So imagine if you were born civilized in a civilized society first. The competition, the gap would have been closed on your behalf before you are born. You see how hard it is for you to close the gap in Nigeria because you have to start from the very bottom, almost like when you were born. It is hard. How do we acknowledge this? Because we weren't supposed to just be a country where only urban cities are focused on and built and developed. That's why if you go to Western countries, you do not have to travel all the way to New York before you make it. Your life is already good where you live in Kentucky or Albuquerque or somewhere in New Mexico. You don't have to travel all the way to Los Angeles to live a good life because everywhere is cared for, is developed. Road networks, everything developed. Few things that you would need. Yes, people would hunger, people would really need to build beyond their village, would travel, would go to big cities where life happens or better things there. But then in Nigeria, you have to first of all, as it's a necessity, it's more like a necessity or now a culture that if you are born in a village, for the only way you must get proper civilization is to leave your village. If not, you won't get civilized. You live there thinking you are living until you weren't here again. You are gone. So you are challenged with closing the gap by first of all traveling out of your village to get civilized. When you get civilized, take your a proper education, proper exposure, proper orientation. You now move up the ladder by closing the gap to getting a proper job, proper earnings, get yourself out of the trenches, live within. It's a lot. So Nigerians, we are beating against a system that it will take us a long time before we break even. Why? Because as we are talking today, Nigeria is not looking into developing rural settlements, which creates this long queue of people coming into urban cities. I think now it's getting better. People are getting relaxed by living in rural settlements. They are getting relaxed because it is not easy in those urban cities because when you come, what you'll be faced with will first of all challenge your life because the gap would surprise you. Like I said before, when I came and I was living in Karimo, I knew this is not where I want to live. All the things I was seeing on TV were the things I liked, but then the gap between me and those things, me and that kind of life, was too wide for me to even imagine. To close that gap, I have to work round the clock, not to close the gap, to be on the path of closing the gap. I was just So this is me making an instance of myself, and this is millions of Nigerians. I sometimes challenge myself by saying, you know what? Some things just have to be the way they are. So I should be bold enough to accept it. And at the same time, I'm like, the people that create this gap living at the other side of the neighborhood that I really, 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 really want to live in or live that life, do they have two heads? Exactly, who are they? Let me give you an instance or a story. When I came to town, to Abuja back then, the first place I was attracted to in going to, seeing how people live in public places was somewhere in central area I call civic center. So I went to civic center. I wandered there one Sunday. I'd gone with a friend to Millennium Park, and from Millennium Park is we can walk. You can walk to civic center. It's owned by Ben Murray Bros. So I walked down to civic center from Millennium Park, and when I went there, the people I saw in the Millennium Park are people like myself from the suburbs, from the trenches, who just want to have a feel of the public space. We'll buy our usual, we'll dress nice, come out, see us in the public park. But when I went to Civic Center, I saw a different population by their outfit, their outlook, the way they speak, their skin, their everything was different from the people I saw in the Millennium Park that I came from. The clothes they wore, the cars they were driving in, everything was different. This is the rich people. This is where they hang out. Not in the Millennium Park. They only come there maybe when they're in necessity. But it was us from the trenches, coming from Maraba, coming from Nyanya, coming from Karimo, Apo, all those villages to come to town. Now let us also enjoy our life. This is the gap. And then you see the rich people, where they live, what they eat, children. I remember one time I went to Civic Center and I saw this Ben Murray Bruce's limousine, and some celebrities had come to do a show or something. There was crowd, people running, and I was watching. This is the life I see on TV. But then, how do these people live? I was desperate to know how these people are living, but then they were the one living in the the gap is wide. So the fight, the struggle continues. When you live in Abuja, I will tell you this. I'm not talking of Lagos. I've not lived in Lagos and to say I live in Lagos for a bit in and out, but I haven't lived in Lagos to say I have the authority or the information or knowledge or the experience to talk about Lagos. In Abuja, the gap is wide. It's big. It's big to the extent that you just know that you can't close this gap before you die. This gap is too big. You can't close it before you die. Unless you are determined to say, like, as far as I'm alive, I'll close this gap. And it's just difficult. I went to my state secretariat one time in Aso Rock. Yeah, I was thinking of Aso Rock. Yeah, Aso Rock. I went there. I saw the buildings. These are foreign structures, the ones you see in the West. And the reason why I'm so emotional about this is I know what it means to be looking at things just like a picture, and you can't access it. You just can't. You see a beautiful, even public hotel. Sometimes you go to a hotel to access good facilities, and sometimes you just can't pay. You just can't pay. It's too expensive for you. The struggle is physical, is real, and is difficult. The gap is wide, and we just don't know if we can all close it in this generation. Because As I speak to you, people every day work to close the gap of hunger first, just to eat, to survive. And if you can't just, as basic as food is, that's the gap you have between your in your life to work so you can feed. As basic as accommodation is, you have to work so you can pay your rent. As basic as you know clothes is, you have to work to earn so you can buy good clothes for yourself. As basic as these things are, those are your own gaps created by hard economy, bad leadership, and everything. So let's get back to Abuja. Now, if you live in Abuja, you know that recently there have been developments happening around real estate development. Government have sold out all those settlements that we used to, gather and live called villages. They have sold it to developers and they are building a state. And a new gap have been created. Government sold these lands to, after pushing away the people that were just there, living there, they will demolish, resell the land, and these developers will build estates, buildings. That's mass housing. Now, in the Nigerian standard, I'll tell you for free. I don't know if it's because of our geology or our climate, or I don't know. Nigerian developers don't build mass housing. What they do is they build some kind of houses and call it estates. You can house 10,000 units. Sorry, why would I say 10,000 units? 100 units of one bedroom flat, two bedroom flats, and they call it mass housing. And then they now create the gap between the price. It's not regulated, government is not involved. So you need to be able to afford to go and live there to close the gap. Government is not building mass housing. Let's say you go to Maraba and said, how many people live in Maraba? Let's say 2 million people live in Maraba, excuse me. Although they have argued that Maraba does not belong to Abuja or the FCT belongs to Nasarawa State, I'm just using that as an example. My tea has cold. Government cannot say, okay, 2 million people live in these suburbs. Let's build a 3 million mass housing in the way Libya did. 10-story building per each unit. And this project is to take 10 years. All you have to do is you build these buildings and sink all the people living in that suburb to those buildings. You have removed people from the slums, at least one phase, into those buildings. And you move into a different suburb and you do the same, removing people from those suburbs. I don't see that happening in Nigeria. Every government will come and talk about mass housing development projects here, 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 here. I remember recently where they uncovered a former CBN governor building crazy, useless apartment building. Is it apartment building or I don't know what structures were those? Estate building. Crazy, stupid waste of land. Building one small thing. Say that's the structure of how. Why can't Nigeria find a way to geologically find a location good for massive, buildings that we see around the world? You come and build two bedroom flat, three bedroom flats, trying to isolate neighbors from neighbors, saying you are building something. If you want to cater for Nigerians' accommodation, try to build massive housing projects where it could now absorb all these people living in suburbs. Government is not helping us close the gap. We are tasked with closing the gap by ourselves. Let's say this former CBN governor succeeded in building those houses. You go to rent that house, they'll tell you 3 million naira a year. You have to pay for 2 years, 6 million. Where you want 6 million? How do you close that gap? See what they're doing to us. The gap just keep getting wide and wide. And that's why you see a lot of people abroad cannot go to Nigeria to stay because the facilities, the amenities, the lifestyle, the things that are accessible here for a poor people like us, is not in Nigeria. If you go to Nigeria, for you to access those things, you have to close the gap now. You have to have tons of money to be able to access that. So people who have experienced foreign life or life abroad can't go back to Nigeria and go back to the trenches where they live or they left. Would you expect someone who have access to a good facility to go back to Nigeria and find themselves in one small comb village when you do not have when you have not closed the gap? It's even difficult now to close the gap, even if you live anywhere. Hey, Paris, how are you? This gap I'm talking about is haunting and taunting a lot of young Nigerians, which is why most of them just want to run away from Nigeria. Because abroad, at least the basic gap between you and the life you want to live is been closed. It's closed. It's not even, it's closed because you have access to those things. That in Nigeria, you have to close the gap by making every necessary effort. We're not even talking, we are talking of basic housing. To talk of transportation, cars, being able to own your own car, you drive. Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot. So I understand when people talk about, you know, poor people living in Nigeria and rich people living in Nigeria. So let me get back to Abuja and Aerofire and the case may be. You see, when I came to Abuja in '03, um, not '03, I didn't stay that time. I came and I went, and then I came back in '05. That was when this demolition happened. And Aerofires at the time, who had actually started demolishing places, was the minister. And the idea was, these suburbs can live, sorry, these villages in the city should not exist because criminals live there, poor people live there. Let me not call them criminals because before you have a criminal, you must have created hunger and desperation for people to want to look for a means to survive. So poor people live here who now are seen as criminals because criminals are coming out of these poor suburbs. So now, after doing that, you demolish and people are being thrown out of their little, you know, place of living or livelihood. What you have done is if the gap was 200 meters between the life you expect them to live and the life they live, you have created it with 300 more meters. It's now 500 meters wide. That's what RFI did in 2003, 4, 5. That was President Olusegun Obasanjo's administration. From that gap, I would tell you, many people have not been able to close that gap with 100 meters. It just got bad and worse. Some people cannot bounce back from the businesses they lost 20 years after. Kids that were born in 2003 today are how old? They are now older. They are now adults. So you can see that this gap is created by administrations, different administration, and it can only be closed by government. If not, trying to close that gap, you will walk all through your life. You might not be able to. That is why in Nigeria, we create this narrative of making it or blow. Because you have to blow to be able to close the gap. The gap is majorly not in any way. Let me tell you what the gap means. The gap means a decent accommodation in a decent environment or neighborhood, with a decent transportation means, which is your personal private car, with a decent job or means of earning income, with a decent what else? Wardrobe. These things are the gaps. Now, when they say that over 130 million Nigerians have sunk into poverty, maybe you are looking at people who are in I don't know who you think is in that category that they are saying over 130 million under Buhari fell into poverty. Buhari came and said he was going to remove 100 million people out of poverty. He sunk 130 million. Nigeria is about 200 and something million into poverty. 130 million Nigerians. I don't know what category you belong, but my parents belong in that category, including myself and my siblings and my family and everybody. We're in that category of that 130 million. I don't know about you guys, but that's what the gap is. So the previous administration widened the gap. Okay, they have widened the gap because if you used to buy a plot of land for 500,000 naira, depend on the location. Now the plot of land is 2.5. That same plot of land you could have bought 500k. Now it is 2.5. Now you want to close the gap by building your own house now, right? The plot now is 2.5. You used to earn 25k. Now you are earning 75k because the economy has so everything is expensive. So including you have tried to bargain a little bit of your salary or 175k or 250k. That's what you're earning. Maybe you think you are growing. You're not to go and price that same plot of land, or if you have already bought it, see how you want to start building. You see that the gap is not government is not helping you close that gap. They're helping you widen that gap by policies, by how the economy is driven. All of these things help just like widen the gap between poor and the rich. And it's not helping. What the government was supposed to be doing was to what? To try to close that gap, bring people out of poverty so that people can live basic life. If you are living below $100 a day, which is 1,600 naira now. Remember back then, living below $100 was a $1 a day was below 150 naira. Then you can still buy beans and bread with 100 naira. Do you understand? But now beans and bread, 1.5. Apparently, you get a very small portion of it. Do you get? So this gap that I came out to talk about in Abuja, where I experienced, is it being closed now? Someone should tell me. 'Cause do you think that gap is being closed? That you can see things happening that will help you close that gap, that you can now you are looking forward to living in a decent environment, decent housing, access to basic amenities with a better standard and quality of life, and the poor, are breaching the gap between the rich and good life is in front of you. You can see it. You just have to try harder. Is it? Is it happening? I doubt it. Man, I have to take this to get my. I remember speaking to a friend of mine that we once lived together, and we're talking about dimensions of growth, and we talked about this particular topic I'm talking about. And the guy told me if this was to be a dimension or a measurement or a diameter to measure developing or development, he would say Nigeria is not developed, but Nigeria is developing. And at the same time, that Nigeria is struggling to understand what development means. People think when they say development, it is just about building uh, skyscrapers, flyover bridges, road networks, and what all these infrastructures. That's what some people think development is. You see, and that is what our leaders understood as development. That's what they think development is. They think if they are in power or in office as leaders, their responsibility is just to build roads and public buildings, so that when they leave office, it can be pointed that this is what Mr. So so and so did when he was in office as minister or this and that. Forgetting that for a country to properly develop, it starts with the people. Nigerians kind of development has never been about the people. It has always been about those who are administering this development, who have to decide what development should be and should not be. So you see Nigerian leaders who come and talk about capital projects and leave some critical areas of development that would create impact and pull people out of poverty. And they focus on uh, capital projects. See, as much as we want these capital projects, the first thing on this phone is just making me, I don't know what's wrong with you now. I don't want to hear this. Like I can't even remove it. I can't lower it. It's not going. No, you guys using this type of phones. Now they try you. What's your problem, bro? Okay, let me take my tea. Okay, you guys. How are you guys doing? You're waiting for me? Yeah? You're with me this morning? Oh my god. I brought out my drugs to take, man. And I forgot. Sorry, you make a no come to call drugs. You know, for this side, you know if you just call drugs. You see, Panadol for Nigeria, we dey call them drugs. Or here, a medication, you dey call them. If not, drugs. Then they go bust you. You go just think, say, now you carry all this. Now you the seller. He go over you that day. You guys stay with me. If you're at work, just stay with me. Lower your volume. Okay, I'm talking something that is very important here. Do you understand? Because Nigeria have created a vacuum where we all have to be content creators. If not, your life will quickly bend. Your life will bend by force. Oh boy, I need water to take this, man. I need water to take my medication. Ah, hmm. Come on, these people have not replied me. What's happening? All right. So, if government failed to close the poverty gap, as much as we want to hold government responsible, we are first of all responsible for our lives. All right? We are responsible for our lives, and whether we succeed in closing that gap or not, at the end of the day, it depends on how you want to live your own life. If you're in if you are desperate to close the gap, you have to work times two, right? You have to work double. That's to say double your hustle. If not, you go over you because you can only look at other people living on the other side of the fence while you are in the other side of the fence. So what does it mean for you to try to close in this gap? What does it mean for you? What does it mean to try closing this gap? You guys here on my Facebook, please. I don't know. I've never been online and someone encouraged me. It's like I'm not saying something that is relatable or something that you guys relate with. Is it what it is? Because I don't think anyone here have stopped to say what's this man saying. Is that the case? Am I wasting my time? Is it what it is? Or am I sharing something that you are relating with? What's going on? Because of what? Before I decided to come on social media and start trying to send out uh, reorientation content, it's me trying to close the gap. That's my own struggle. I have things I want to market. I have things I want to sell. And realizing that in 2025, if you don't take your space, your media space, if you don't take your, you know, get into the media space, you might not be able to be in the market. That's why you see that most actors and most celebrities we used to know back in the day on TV today are nowhere to be found. It's not like they stopped their career and stopped acting or stopped making music. It's because when the social media space came, they didn't close that gap. For them, that could be their gap. That's why some of them couldn't continue with the trend. Those who did, who had people who advised them to, follow this social media space so that you can also be visible, they are still in the market. So for some of us, coming here on social media, whether you like it or not, is because that's our own way to trying to close the gap that is in practical view between your being poor and trying to close the gap. Being rich is not an agenda. It's not because somebody have to be rich. As people will look at it as what is this, you know, desperation to want to become rich. Why are Nigerians always desperate to be rich? Nigerians are not desperate to be rich. Nigerians want to live a better life like every other human being lives in the rest of the world. Nigerians just want to live a better life like other people are living. So it's not being desperate to be rich. I spoke to a friend of mine in from South Africa the other day. He was like, "Oh, I don't like Nigerians. The Nigerians they always want to be, they just want money, money, money." I said to him, "Look, that's your mindset. That's your mentality because you don't understand Nigerians. The reason why we are desperate to have money is closing that gap is important for us because nobody's doing it for us. Our government is not doing it for us. So we have to do it by ourselves. So you see a Nigerian working desperately to make money. It's not because he wants to make money just to have money. What does money mean? Money mean but having a good livelihood, living in a good environment, a decent house, wearing decent clothes, have a quality life. That's what money is translated to. That's what we Nigerians are desperate to have. Quality life, better life, like people have in the Western world. What do you mean by Nigerians are desperate to be rich? How? We just want to live a basic quality life like you guys are living. South Africa, for example, I would have said if Nigeria was a colony of any country in the West, they should have allowed the colonizers to live, to stay in Nigeria so they can help us develop and close this gap. I don't think that if colonizers were still in Nigeria up until now, we still have this huge, terrible deficit in basic human necessities. Because they would have helped us close those gaps, even though till today that they have left. Are they not still extorting us? They should have stayed and built houses, create better living conditions for us, and then let us have that first. Then we can talk about freedom. But we don't have those. We still don't have those. What is freedom if you are living in a deficit life where you have to live the way we live in Nigeria? Are we not now recolonizing ourselves, selling ourselves to foreign countries by trying to live a better life? So what's the use now? We got freedom from British, and now what are we using it for? What are we using it for? So if someone tells me, "Oh, you Nigerians are always desperate to make money, money," it's because you don't even know the culture of Nigerians. You don't know the history of Nigeria. You just think, "Oh, we are just desperate to make money." Even if we are desperate to make money, we have a reason for that. Nobody wants to live in a dilapidated environment where you can't breathe free, good air. I just say it the way it is. We are not desperate to make money, but we are desperate to live a better life. Oh no, this thing is going to crash. Let it just crash, man. 'Cause I'm tired. So what is this? As I'm saying, the gap we have in Nigeria is just too wide. Yeah, JC, how's up? Yeah, I'm good, man. I sent this since you didn't post it. You didn't post it, bro. Yeah, I'm really live already. You said what? Yeah, I'm live. Hold on. So, you guys, please allow me to allow me to take off this phone. So, guys, share with me what is your experience of how closing the what's your experience on closing the gap of poverty in your life or as a Nigerian citizen. Okay, leave me a comment. What has been your experience trying to close the gap of poverty in poverty is not a bad term. So if you see yourself as or you refer to yourself as being poor, it doesn't mean you are poor. It's just facing the truth about the gap between what you live, your daily life, what you see, how you live your life, and the affluence of those who command the affluence of wealth. Because you can tell if you're poor, you can tell if you're rich, you can tell with these lines. Okay, so I'm going to take contributions from my support group so that I divide this conversation. It's been me talking all along since I started this episode. You know, yeah. Hi, Gift. Good morning, Gift George, Sonny Bumi, Dada Emeka, Aflon Joseph, Helen, Tina. How are you guys doing? Thank you for joining me this morning as we talk about this episode of closing the gap of poverty in Nigeria and the experience of other Nigerians. So my support group here, we have some support contributions. Let me take some of the contributions because as I know, that this is reality. In Nigeria, you must belong in one side of the divide, the gaps. It's either you are in the poor suburbs or you are in the rich neighborhoods, and that is the primary um, evident proof of the distance between being poor and being rich in Nigeria. Whether it means anything or not, it doesn't matter. It's not the focus is not how wealthy you are, how rich you are, but the necessary basic things that gives life meaning is those things. Basic quality housing. Do you understand? Food to eat. You don't have to struggle for you to have a course meal and all those things. What's been your experience? I mean, you must be trying to close this gap every day. That's your, what are we all doing? I'm trying to close a gap here. That's what I'm doing. We're all trying to close a gap between where I am and where I want to be. The distance. We keep walking towards that distance. We just keep doing it, whatever it takes. But how easy is it? And the main thing is there is supposed to be um this is supposed to be a responsibility of, is it solely your responsibility to closing that gap? It is not. It is not. Is government helping you close that gap? Let's see what some people have to say. So Abuja for many people is okay. I'm taking this contribution from Suleiman. He said Abuja for many people is the city of marble buildings and diplomatic zones. Yet behind the city gates, a different story unfolds. The rapid urbanization hasn't come with equally rapid inclusion. We need to move beyond infrastructural pride and internationally invest in low income housing, local skills hubs, and targeted social welfare policies. Only then can we begin to bridge, or as we call it, flaws, that stubborn gap that keeps many residents in circles of poverty. Thank you, Suleiman. So what am I saying? I'm not the only one going through this. We're all Nigerians. Truth be told, we're going through a lot. The gap is wide. Every day we work hard to closing that gap. It doesn't seem like we are doing our best, or our best didn't seem it's not looking like it's enough. What can we do? What should we do? What must we do? What must we do to close this gap? What must we do to close this gap? So this is what Suleiman have said, right? We need to move beyond infrastructural pride. This is what I said before. Infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. Everybody wants infrastructural development. Roads. You have roads, good, good, but you don't have a car. How does this really, change your life? Close the gap. What it does is, yeah, it gives you access to transportation. You can easily travel from one place to another. You have marble buildings that you probably cannot get a job there to even clean. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't close that gap for you. What close gap for you is the things that really, really transform, or help you move beyond just being, a citizen of Nigeria. Um, this guy said, "Thank you for this community you are creating. I like it. Sorry, I can't be live with you. Okay. In communities, for example, like Pape and Nyanya, you see the consequence of inadequate or inequality. That's what I'm saying. Like, how do you manage TikTok for those of you who use TikTok? I just open this phone. Man, this phone is just pissing me off. If I will be strike with copyright, okay, let me use my headphones to remove the sound. You can be singing if you want. Okay, in communities like Mbappe and Nyanya, I've lived in Mbappe once in a while, once in my lifetime. I know Papi very well. You see the consequences of inequality every day. Families living on daily income that barely covers food, let alone rent or healthcare. Flossing this gap, Closing this gap will mean that, sorry, let me take it again. Closing this gap would mean that people have to return back to where they came from if you're not originally from Abuja. It is despicable, but this is what we face every day. See, that's what we face every day. Like it or not, the gap just keep getting wider, and we have to face it because we also have to coexist. We have to live here. We have to live here. You guys give me a minute, all right? So this gap I'm talking about, it has to do with economic viability as well. To close the gap of poverty, a lot of factors are being measured or factored in, right? Um, so Abuja, for instance, despite being the political heartbeat of Nigeria and home to glamming skyscrapers, luxury hotels, and diplomatic enclaves, Abuja still bears witness to pockets of deep poverty hidden in satellite towns and informal settlement. Bridging this gap requires a multi-layered approach driven by policies, reforms, grassroots initiatives, and the collective resolve of Nigerians. And our government will try to do these things, but they won't be able to do it because the citizens don't cooperate. Alive. Okay. So what's is it Aliyu Faria? Thank you for your contribution. This guy said to truly address poverty in Abuja or Nigeria, we must go beyond tokens interventions and invest in long-term solutions. Vocational training centers in places like Nyanya and Gwagwalada should be modernized, enabling young people to gain practical skills that are directly linked to market demand. Additionally, microcredit support for women traders in markets like Garki and Wuse could empower how those of household income. If this will close the gap for you, no problem. Okay. Now this guy said, I'm a founder of a youth empowerment initiative in Kubwa. In Abuja, satellite towns is where is housed to unemployment youth, fueled which fueled homelessness. By supporting social enterprises, I'm not saying because I'm an entrepreneur, but that would be encouraging local startups. We can create a circle where young people are not just job seekers but job creators. Government backs job creators, government back seats grants, transparent mentorship programs, and tax incentives for small businesses will go a long way. But as for closing the gap of decent housing, decent accommodation, and all the amenities that give life a meaning, this will now depend on what government can provide for the youth. Okay, no doubt. Okay, I agree. Mrs. Ngo said, "Thank you for creating these communities, Anders. This is my first message." Okay, okay. For your question, poverty is often deepened by poor health. Many families in areas like Kuje or Karimo spend what little they have on treating preventable illnesses, improving access to affordable primary health care, and promoting preventive health education can reduce this burden, freeing resources for education and small-scale businesses. Government should close the gap of certain areas such as this healthcare system so that people can focus on other things with the little resources they earn. That is how government can help close the gap. Okay, thank you, Ms. Ingo. So you see that if you're earning a certain income, you have to split your income around everything that government is supposed to provide for you. So if government can close the gap of healthcare services for you, providing healthcare for you, so that you have access to good healthcare, at least they have closed that gap. But you see, the gap in Nigeria I'm talking about is healthcare gap. So you have to close the gap of providing healthcare for yourself, social housing. Why is it? Why do I say social housing? Housing for yourself, and other things that government is supposed to help you create, close the gaps. Ahmed say, Rahila. Laugh first. I'm a graduate, but today I'm a volunteer in Lugbe Cooperative, Women Cooperative, something. In Lugbe, yes, let me share my experience. There are plenty areas. Many women run small roadside businesses. Some sell corn by the roadside. Some are selling all petty things to earn a living, but struggle with inconsistent income is becoming alarming because that's the only thing we can do to earn a living. For example, I'm a graduate and I am a volunteer. I don't get paid. What I do is I hustle. This is forming women's cooperative can help them access pooled savings, bulk buying opportunities, and basic business training, turning survival into stability. This is what I do at the center as a volunteer. If government can help establish a proper training facility for these women, then it will close that gap. There's so much areas, so much that this gap has to close. So much. Because at the end of the day, what is a gap for you is a different thing for another person. The gap is different. It's different. It's different. This guy said closing the poverty gap in Nigeria or in Abuja requires more than charity. It calls for strategic investment, inclusive urban planning, and policies that prioritize the dignity and potential of every resident, both in local rural places, because people are trooping into urban areas such as Abuja because there is nothing in the place they are coming from. Abuja can move closer to being not just the seat of power, but also a capital of shared prosperity. Thank you for this contribution. Absolutely, I agree with you. Thank you for joining my community, guys. Good morning. If you are here on my Facebook, TikTok, or um, YouTube here, thank you, guys. What I'm trying to do is reorient people understanding certain things that are really like whether they are priority to you or not. But we need to understand certain things that help us move, grow, and close the gap between where we want to be and where we are today. Because I know for sure that everybody that wake up today is trying to close a gap. It's either a gap of poverty, sorry, a gap of being able to fend for his family or her family, to buy clothes for yourself, to buy food, to pay your rent, to pay your transportation. Do basic things. Pay for basic things. Things that government is supposed to help you do that they are not doing. You have to do it for yourself. We. Uh, that's how we Nigerians are. And that's why I argue that most time people say Nigerians just desperate to make money. We are not desperate. We just want to be able to make ends meet. Samuel said, let us not forget that tech is taking over. Education remains the most sustainable tool against poverty. To close this gap you are talking about, in places like Karimo and Dede, many students still lack digital access. We need to invest in low-cost community tech hubs, solar-powered digital libraries, and teacher training in digital skills. So no child in Abuja is left behind knowledge economy. In this knowledge economy, you guys should join my community, please. Join my community. Subscribe to my YouTube and follow my Facebook page. If you're on TikTok, also follow me. Let's just keep pushing it, right? Let's be closing the gap one by one. Closing the gap could be, you could be doing anything to close your own gap. And there are people trying to do their own bits also in different areas to close their own gap. Dr. Chinedu said, have you talked of malnutrition among children in Abuja's low income areas quietly perpetuated perpetuates poverty? School feeding programs, nutrition awareness campaigns and support for mothers can help break this cycle and give children a fairer start in life. Bridging this gap could be a long distance thing, but for the immediate, these children need to be given a chance when they are baited. Okay, okay, okay. All right. Ali, you said environmental poverty is what you're talking about, but it is overlooked in real terms. Communities living in flood prone or waste choked areas suffered health and economic losses every rainy season. Investing in proper drainages, waste management, and eco friendly jobs like recycling cooperatives can both protect the environment and lift people out of poverty. That is how you close the gap. Thinking not just for urban settlement, but also people who are at the bottom. Thank you for that. Join our community so you can also have contribute and join me here because I'm always alone here. I don't like it, but I wait for the day you guys will decide to start joining me here. Uh, this guy said transportation and research policies. All right, I have people with too much grammar. Transport is a poverty issue in Abuja. Daily commuters from Mararaba, Karu, and Zuba spend hours and much of their income just getting to work. Improving affordable mass transit systems, and safer routes would directly increase the, the disposable income and quality of life. To close that gap, we need to make sure that these things are provided by government, of course. Okay. So if we have affordable uh, transportation, which is mass transit and good roads, it could close that gap. It could. It could. I mean, all of these are all put together to closing the gap. And what are we talking about? Closing that gap that have been left for individuals, citizens to close this gap by themselves, which is what have created the intense need for people to hustle or double their hustle to be able to what? To closing this gap. Because at the end of the day, you have to double your hustle to be able to close the gap. You have to buy your own car. If you don't, you have to have the money to transport yourself. Sometimes you have to take boats or Uber to go to where you're going to. If you don't have the money, you have to suffer through the hustle. It is all closing the gap. And this gap could be closed when these amenities are provided, like this mass transit is closing the gap. It's very important. This thing affects people's lives. Blessing said, creative industries can also absorb thousands of young talents in Abuja, from music and film to craft and design. Why do we have to always rely on Lagos for entertainment only when Abuja is also house to talented youth? If the government invests in cultural hubs, artist grants and creativity could become an engine of inclusive growth, especially for undeserved youth. But we leave it all for Lagos. Okay, thank you. Um, okay, thank you for your contribution. Grace Omotola said, I just joined your community here. Poverty hits women had hard set. Sorry. Poverty hits women hardest, especially single mothers. Expanding low interest loan scheme. Everybody have his own gap. I swear, everybody have his own gap. We're all closing the gap, struggling to close the gap. Expanding low interest loan schemes, providing subsidized child care centers, and creating safe space where women can learn and network can transform entire families and close the gap. Not everybody needs luxurious housing or a luxurious car. We just need basic things to live by. That's cool. David said, in place like Buhari, young people feel excluded. Engaging youth in community decision making from local councils to urban planning committees. There's nothing for young people. They just have to do whatever they want to do. No inclusiveness. This makes development more irrelevant and insustainable. Okay, thank you for that. I know Buhari Council, area council. I once have a friend there who lives there. I know that place very well. Professor Amina said, oh, Zanders, I didn't know you sent me a message a long time. I'm just seeing it. Thank you. Okay, Abuja was built as a planned city. This is Professor Amina, Sani, University of Abuja, yes. But rapid population growth outpaced the plan. Updating the Abuja master plan to include affordable housing, mixed use development, and more green space will reduce inequality and improve social cohesion. I think the Abuja urban planners should look into this. Okay. This one said, as Abuja grows, so must our compassion and creativity in addressing poverty. So the diver perspective I have is that diverse actors from tech innovation to community pastors should seek for solutions. These pastors are also the reason why there is so much pollution in our small villages around Abuja. They just come, build small tents and loudspeakers. Everybody get it till they worry them, I swear. Somebody is saying loudspeaker. How are you guys doing? Thank you guys for joining me here. Hope you're good. All right. Shehu said, let's talk about digital literacy. Can we unlock the economic doors for thousands of unemployed youths living in Abuja's informal settlements? Because by partnering with telcos, okay, telcos, which is telecommunication, to set up free Wi-Fi zones and offering evening classes on digital skills. We can help traders, artisans, and unemployed youth access e-commerce and online services. This will bridge that gap, if not in total, at least a bit. Thank you for your contribution. Um, Florence said, "What about?" He said, "I live in Abuja. What about disabled people? In Gwagwalada, disability is a problem in the university. People with disabilities in Abuja faces double exclusion, poverty, and inaccessibility. To bridge the gap, public buildings, marketplaces, and transport system must be designed with universal access in mind. Beyond charity, we need policy-backed inclusive designs." Thank you. Another contribution here from Pastor Sam Ladi said, faith communities in Abuja already run food banks, scholarship programs, and small business loans quietly. Partnering with faith-based organizations with government poverty alleviation scheme can multiply the impact and reach deeply into overlooked neighborhood and close the gap. At least with that, we know that we are moving forward to closing the gap. We are doing our best as clergies, but then government has to work with us. Okay, thank you for your contribution, sir. I appreciate it. Agada said, rural development is a key factor. It's especially, I don't know, especially. But in Abuja's poverty story isn't just urban. Villages in Abuja Municipal Area Council, AMAC, like Gube, Abigaube, and Pai. I don't know this pronunciation. Gaube and Pai have poor road networks and limited electricity. Investing in rural federal roads, rural electrification, and small-scale irrigation projects would reduce urban drift and balance development. Absolutely, absolutely. And Zainab said, first time here on your community. Let's talk about Kubwa. Community thrift group help women save small amounts daily. In Kubwa, if banks or fintechs were to be set up in this area where population is massive, this could support these groups with micro loans and financial education. The ripples effects can be huge, especially among petty traders flooding these areas. All right. So there's a lot of contributions here. You see that depending on where you live in Abuja, depending on where you live, you will see how glaring it is that government ineffectiveness shows in the kind of public engagement or public um, policies that are being put out by government to help eradicate or pull people out of this this long gap as created by policies of previous administration or poverty, whatever it is. So thank God I have this mug. It keeps my tea warm a little. So it is all boils down to government because whatever everybody is saying here, they are referring to government. Everybody is referring to government. Government do this, government do that. And because government is not doing that, we are left to do it on our own. We are left to do all these things for ourselves, by ourselves, without any external help. And at the end of the day, what happens is we are we get home tired, hustling to just bridge that gap. Hustling to bridge that gap. Okay. This guy said This topic is large. It is giving mental. Uh, there's a. It's giving Abuja mental well-being project. I don't know if that's a project. Poverty and mental health reinforce each other. Stress, trauma, and depression can keep people trapped in poverty. Affordable communities, counseling centers, and workplace mental health programs are urgently needed because most of these people in these settlements are going through mental stress, and there's no center for them to decompress or uh, help themselves. Okay. In Nigeria, we don't think of mental health as an issue. We don't think of it as a problem because, yeah, people go through stress, mental stress, especially. And if you go to these rural places or these satellite towns, I mean, you don't see centers where you can actually walk in and try to help yourself. In fact, in Nigeria, if you talk about mental health, people really just go from 0 to 100 to think, oh, you are mad or you are crazy. So something's wrong with you. You need to know that mental stress is is real. You know, a lot of people go through mental stress because of what they do. With their time, the stress they go through at work. Some people because of going from where they live to where they work and coming back every day is a lot, but they have to do it every day of the week. They have to do it every day of the week because that's how you make a living. Okay. Victor said many low-income homes around Abuja still cook with charcoal or firewood or kerosene. Supporting clean cooking stove project and affordable solar kits would reduce household energy costs, improve health, and protect the environment. It's shameful that you walk around these places and you see people cooking outside and badly enough on charcoal and kerosene stove. With I don't know, we're not surprised. It's our daily lives. It's our daily life. Victor said financial literacy is just as important too. Let's not forget. As access to finance, teaching women and young entrepreneurs how to budget, track profit, and separate personal from business funds makes their businesses more sustainable. For some people, they could have closed the gap with the money or business they do, but cannot because they do not have the financial literacy. Okay, financial literacy. It's also an area. Noted. Thank you. Inaji said, transport corporation, transport cooperative membership is important. Transport unions and cooperative could negotiate bulk fuel discounts and group insurance for drivers. Also, create a membership for commuters to be able to have membership card of transportation so you don't have to bother to worry about transportation every day. With that, you can transport to and fro your workplace until the month end you get to pay when salary is paid. It means that means lower cost for drivers, cheap fare for commuters, and more stable livelihood. This is this is also an option or an alternative or a solution. Rukia said community radio can educate and mobilize people on issues like this, especially waste recycling, health checks, and voter participation. This will give voice to local challenges and solutions, help residents feel part of Abuja's story. Okay, so we've been talking about the gap, closing the gap of poverty in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. Okay, There's a huge gap in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, because if you know Abuja very well, you know that there are two categories of Abuja residents: those who live in the suburbs in these satellite towns, and those who live in the main town. There's no, it's not a necessity. It's not necessary that we all should live in Usetu, Mitama, and Asokoro. No, what we are saying is to bridge this gap. Okay, build massive, affordable mass housing. Yes, there is Kubwa. Yes, there is Massacres. Yes, there is Maraba. Yes, there is Lugbe. Yes, there is Airport Road. Yes, there is all these places. And yes, there are estates being built. But can every one of us pay, be able to afford these estate buildings? Government should come halfway. People have contributed here, all saying at least what they think can help close the gap and what could help, you know, upgrade the life of citizens, especially in Nigeria. But you need to know that some of the things we mention here are basic amenities that government is not supposed to be told before they do it. But those things are not being done. So at the end of the day, we are calling on this government that we always call on to look into all these things because that is development, not necessarily skyscrapers and marble buildings as you see it as development. Talking about transportation rails that we don't even see being tangible, and all these things that we don't really see being tangible. So just joining me here, my community of places, people and places. This today's episode we talked about closing the gap of poverty in Nigeria. Abuja, the capital. I start with Abuja because I mean every city you go between Abuja and Lagos, there's a deficit of housing. I was giving you an instance before that if you come to the town, not Lagos, basically, I'm talking of Abuja. Before with my own experience, you see that during the day, there's a crowd, there's population in the main town of Abuja. People walking, people doing all sort of things. Immediately it hits 4, 5, people started leaving, going back to their trenches, going back to their small suburbs. Of course, it's okay. I'm not downplaying on those kind of no, that's where I live. I'm also in that population. I'm among the 130 million Nigerians that are poor and that they should lift out of poverty. So you see people start living, and then between 10, 11, 9, 10, 11 in the evening or in the night, you come back to the city of Abuja, who say two and all these places, it become quiet. Maybe now it has changed. It becomes so quiet that people have left to their suburbs. That's where now it will now be bubbling in the suburbs. We are living our little lives there. The main city, people have left. Where are these people? And they are the engine and the powerhouse of the city. But they don't have access to a good, affordable, life. What they do is they come work for those people who are rich, clean their buildings, sell their market, support them, take care of whatever they have to take care of, and they leave. And then we go back to our small space and we start living there. And this has happened. The government is not helping to close this gap. If you fall sick, you struggle to have access to healthcare. If you need to go to school, you struggle to pay school fees. If you want to transport yourself, you struggle to transport yourself safely. Today now, the only safety transportation means in Nigeria is by air. And because of that, the fare of buying a ticket from Abuja to Lagos, Abuja to Benin, or Port Harcourt is mind-boggling. How are they closing that gap? They are supposed to have railways, but even the railways are not there. They are not closing that gap for you. You have to close the gap by yourself. Maybe eventually one day, even commercial flights will be too basic that people will now start looking at buying private jets. They just keep making the gap wide because even commercial flight today used to be luxury. Today is now it's like almost a necessity for people who want to fly, safe. or travel safe. So you can get to where you're going safe without being kidnapped along the way or being attacked by herdsmen or kidnappers. So you have to take flight. How many people can take a flight, pay successfully and go from you know one place to another? All this gap is being widened. And even if you want to take the flight, you have to pay through your nose. These are the things we are talking about. This gap have to be closed. And Abuja being the capital city of Nigeria, this is where it is paramount. If you come to Abuja, you should be lifted. The hope that you have come to a city that will help you bridge the gap between where you want to go and where you are should be visible. But you don't see it because when you come, the first thing you see is fence. There's a fence that fence around your dream and where you are. The dream of where you want to be and where you are. You have to find all means to break it and to be able to move towards where your destination is. And these things are not easy. You have to give a lot energy to be able to achieve this. I think I'll end my broadcast here today. I've done a bit of 2 hours straight. All right. So we'll take another topic later in the evening. I hope you join me. If you want to join my community, please, I appreciate it. I'll post the link so that you guys can join. Okay. You subscribe to the channel and we can meet there. And we'll follow you also on my WhatsApp group. So you can be my backup WhatsApp support group. The WhatsApp support group is for everybody because as I'm creating this community, we'll be able to support each other with ideas and publicity as also your brand, whatever you do, so that we can all help each other close this gap that we're talking about. Because it's important that we close this gap. It's important because every day you wake up, what you want to do is close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. The same thing I'm doing here. I want to close that gap. That gap could be for me that I want to, be able to, push, sell my brand so I can make better income, so I can take care of those things I need to take care of. And for you, you need to work, or for you, you need to do one or two things. Everybody has the reason why they have to push every day. They have to go to work every day. They have to close the gap between where they are and where they want to go. We all have to do that. And by doing so, we need each other to do so because sometimes the power we have is in together. That's why you see that government has to, hear the voice of the people. And the voice of the people is not me talking to government. No, it's we talking to government, if that is the case. So we need to be able to work together as a people, have the same voice, understand our goals, so we can communicate clearly what our objective or our agenda to growing is. So thank you guys for joining me here today. Wherever you are now at work, we'll have our evening nuggets as well. So we'll take a different topic in the evening. I'm available as much as I can be, so we can at least. This is my own approach to see how I can close the gap because I have something I feel is important that I share. And every day I come here, I pick one thing or the other. Sometimes I don't have anything, but I have to be available or be present here. So thank you guys and have a wonderful day as well there. God bless you. Okay. So end the stream now.